So, this is section 4 concerning the women. And I tried multiple times to record this. And I don't think I will read this chapter, and I'd like to explain why. This chapter has a very, very unflattering depiction of the women of Flatland. And even though these are fantasy people in a fantasy universe, which is a kind of mathematical parable meant to satirize Victorian society, the more takes I did, and the more recordings I threw away for different reasons, the more I realized I was just very uncomfortable reading this material. Most of the book is fine, and I, as far as I know, will continue to read it. I've read this book years ago, and it fits in with the theme of this channel. But no, this chapter, this section, is not something I can read and feel comfortable with. I should summarize it, though. So the idea is that women in Flatland are basically sharp needles. As I read in earlier chapters, sort of lower class people are triangles, and the more they get to be equilateral, the higher they rise. And then people rise in society by gaining more sides. So, because the women in Flatland are sharp needles, they're very dangerous. So there's all these laws concerning the behavior of women. They have to move around constantly. They have to sort of make a low humming noise. And there are these restrictive laws governing their behavior. So segregated entrances to buildings, for example. And there's death penalty for certain things. Another thing is that these people of Flatland are just figures in space. Well, the straight, sharp line that women are doesn't have any room for a brain, which is an especially unfortunate development, given that the author was very much in favor of educating women, and from what I've been able to read, believed strongly in the intellectual equality of women and men. So the author of this book was not prejudiced. He depicts this highly unequal society that one can certainly take as a satire of Victorian social norms and restrictions, and I think that's the best way to take it. Now, this does not mean that this part is pleasant to read, as I've mentioned before. For example, on this page, it's talking about how emotional women get and how they can, kill their entire family and then not even remember about it. And so they talk about how all the restrictions and things are meant to both protect women and protect other people, men, and so on. So it doesn't have a very flattering view of the intellectual qualities of the women in Flatland. And there are some things here, for example, at the bottom of this page, the sentence starting "the tact and skill," that seem a little bit overwrought, I suppose. I really get the impression that even if Abbott wasn't a bigot or prejudiced or a sexist, even according to the standards of his day, which, of course, in general were far worse than the standards of our time. Really, I feel like A. Square, the narrator of this book, kind of was, or is, a bit of a bigot in his own society, even if he thinks that he's simply telling plain truths. It's interesting. These days we talk in certain circles, so to speak, a lot about biological essentialism. And, are there things that are true about women or true about men because of, biological sex or whatever? I am personally a person who believes trans men are men, trans women are women, non-binary people are valid. Biological essentialism of this kind does nothing for me in terms of gender. There are reasons to believe that men broadly defined and women broadly defined are in some sense different at the level of population. But of course, in this book, they are fundamentally, biologically, as it were, different in a profound, fundamental way that, as the narrator points out, makes a lot of things that men can do in Flatland impossible for women to do in Flatland. Which, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is the opposite of what the author thought about real human women. And one of these pages, the narrator of Flatland, A. Square, the square person, the square man of Flatland, says something to that effect, that, women are actually a whole lot worse off in Flatland than human women are on Earth in space. So anyway, is this the next chapter? Yes, that's the next chapter. So I've flipped through every page of this, and of course I'll link to the text of the book. But this one, I just don't feel comfortable reading it. It's not entertaining in the way some of these chapters are. So this book is very interesting in many ways. But this part, I'm going to pass on, and if you've got this far in the video, let me know what you think about that. It's certainly a matter of opinion. But as I said, I tried to record this several times, and the more I recorded it, the more I felt like I could be seen as endorsing these views. I would hope that people would not think that. But I wouldn't want to add to a situation that might cause confusion. So, the narrator of the book, the supposed narrator, is laying out some things that are unpleasant. The author of Flatland did not believe them about humans. But yeah, that's what I'm going to say about that for now. I will, as far as I know, there's nothing offensive to that extent in the rest of the book, and I would like to continue with that. So, take care, and I will record more of this later.